And this morning, I just want us to spend some time just hearing what the Lord has to say to us. And our devotion for today comes from the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 1, and I'm going to read a few scriptures and just briefly navigate those scriptures as we look at the word of God and the power it has in influencing a man to a position of authority and causing him to shine even in his generation. Now, in the third year, this is Daniel chapter 1 and verses 1. In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hands, with some of the articles of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God. And he brought the articles into the house of his God. Now that the king instructed Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel, and some of the king's descendants, and some of the nobles, young men in whom there was no blemish, but good-looking, gifted in all wisdom. Note this, gifted, good-looking. They were supposed to be young men in whom there was no blemish, good-looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge, and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and who they might teach the language and the literature of the Chaldeans. Now, when you continue on to read, and the king appointed them, this is verse 5, appointed for them a daily provision of the king's delicacies and of the wine which he drank, and 3 years of training for them, so that at the end of that time they might serve before the king. Now from among those of the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. To them the chief of the eunuchs gave the names, he gave Daniel the name Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah Shadrach, and to Mishael Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. We go on to verse 8, it says, But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into the favor and goodwill of the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your food and drink. For why should he see your faces looking worse than the young men who are your age? Then you would endanger my head before the king. Verse 11 says, So Daniel said to the steward whom the chief of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, Please test your servants for 10 days, and let them give us vegetables to eat, and water to drink. Then let our appearance be examined before you, and the appearance of the young men who eat the portion of the king's delicacies, and as you see fit, so deal with your servants. So he consented with them in this matter and tested them 10 days. And then at the end of 10 days, their features appeared better and fatter in flesh than all the young men who ate the portion of the king's delicacies. Thus the steward took away their portion of delicacies and the wine that they were to drink, and gave them vegetables. Verse 17, As for these 4 young men, God gave them knowledge and skill in all literature and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Verse 18, Now at the end of the days, when the king had said that they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. Then the king interviewed them, and among them all, none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they served before the king, and in all matters of wisdom and understanding, about which the king examined them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers who were in all his realm. Then Daniel continued until the first year of King Cyrus. This morning I want us to have a conversation about God looking for a man. And when I say a man, I mean both male and female. Even the woman is represented in this conversation. In our devotion today, I feel like we are in a season where the Lord is seeking for men who are going to stand out, not just in the service of his kingdom, but also in the service of the world, so that the world can be drawn to this God that you serve. And the story of Daniel is one such story that we see. It's interesting that the children of Israel have been taken into captivity in the land of Babylon. And yet this king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, recognizes that there is something special about the children of God. And that's why he seeks to have them brought on board to serve in his kingdom. And so he gives specific instructions about who should be selected to be part of the team that serves in the palace. And so by the time we get to meet Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, these are the guys who had passed the test. And we read in verse 4, it says, these were the qualifications. They were supposed to be young men in whom there was no blemish, but good looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge, and quick to understand, who had the ability to serve in the king's palace. Now this morning, I really want to ask, even before we get into the assignment that the king is about to give these 4 young men, there are set qualifications that are sought after. And because God is a God of excellence, there are also qualifications that this morning he is looking for in that man, whom he will send on a divine assignment, be it to the nations, be it to the corporate world, be it to bring a transformation. And in each of these qualifications that was brought forth by the king, we see first, children of Israel who are selected must have been children who knew who they were. Because he said, bring some of the children of Israel. That's number 1. Number 2, bring some of the king's descendants, meaning that these children, these particular young men that needed to be selected into the company of the king, needed to understand their lineage. Do you this morning know your lineage? Do you know that you're a royal priesthood, a chosen generation? Because that's what it means to be descendants of the king. You are of the family of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And if you don't understand this, the problem will be is that when you walk into the palace, you will behave like a nobody. But when you know that your lineage is already from the king's descendants, you're one of the king's descendants, then you don't behave like normal man. And then it says the third thing was that they were to be part of the nobles. Identity, getting to know who you are. The Lord this morning is looking for men and women who know who they are, so that he can send them on his divine assignment. Now there were other qualifications that were attached to these 3. It says they needed to be young, no blemish, These were men who are taking care of themselves, good looking. Physical attributes. How are you taking care of yourself? Do you care? Not just about your spiritual state. You've got to be whole mentally. You've got to be whole in a space of wholeness spiritually, even physically. You know, when I think about this, there are very many of us who the Lord would want to send on assignment to the palace. But unfortunately, because of the way we represent ourselves, the way we speak, the way we carry ourselves, the way we engage with people, we have no opportunity even to get access to the doors of the palace. And when I speak about the palace, I speak about positions of influence. There's a greater assignment for you and I. But we must be careful to know how we represent ourselves, how we present ourselves matters. It says they were gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge and quick to understand. What do you possess? What do you hold? You might say, oh, I don't have wisdom. But the book of James says, let him who has no wisdom ask. Pray about it. Ask the Lord for wisdom. If the king requires wisdom, then there's an opportunity for you to get that wisdom in the Lord. If the marketplace requires wisdom, you have an opportunity to get that wisdom in God. It says, possessing knowledge and quick to understand. From this, I take a heart posture of wanting to learn, the humility to be in a position to learn. You know, sometimes because we are in an era where knowledge is so readily available, the minute we get a little knowledge, we get puffed up with pride. And from then on, nobody can tell us nothing. Because we figured and we are telling ourselves, we know, don't tell me, I know. I've listened to 2 or 3 podcasts on how to build a career. What do you mean you can teach me anything? And this heart of pride becomes the stumbling block by which we cannot access certain doors. Because for you to serve in the palace, you know what? I like that the next thing it points out as a condition is that they had the ability to serve in the king's palace. This ability can only be found in your ability to learn, because the king will put you into custody or place you under the custody of men who are supposed to teach you the ways of the palace. But you will not flourish in the palace if you do not have a humble and teachable spirit. It says, and whom they might teach the language and the literature of the Chaldeans. Because everywhere the Lord sends you, you will find that that place has a culture, it has a system, it has a way. And sometimes your ability to be able to learn the language and the culture and the behavior of the Chaldeans is not so that you become like the Chaldeans. It's so that you're able to flourish even in the midst of the Chaldeans. But many times, we don't have that ability to learn. We have perceived that there is a culture that we already know and are not interested. You know, every system has a way by which it runs. And wisdom requires that sometimes in certain spaces, we get to those spaces and we learn how things operate so that we are wise. So that we are wise. So that we walk in wisdom. And as you go on, I like that in verse 8, this is Daniel 1 verses 8, it says, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's delicacies. And here we see a man of consecration. Remember, we're having a conversation about God looking for a man that he would send on his assignment. This morning, the Lord is looking for a man. And we're just going through the qualifications of some of the things that the Lord is looking out for today. He says, Daniel purposed in his heart that he will not defile himself. Do you know your consecrations? Let me explain just a little bit what a consecration is. Is that that thing that sets you apart, that you say, this is the sacrifice I am willing to make in order to serve the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. These are some of the things I must do to preserve who I am as a child of the King of Kings. But these are also some of the things that I cannot do. Consecrations are both things that you do and things that you are not supposed to do. And the intentions of consecration is to preserve who you are, the purity of who you are in your service to the King. So Daniel realizes, this food will not do. And he influences the other young men they were with, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 4 guys make the decision that we will not eat this. This is what we will eat. They will eat their vegetables and their water. Maybe your consecration is there certain spaces the Lord is going to ask you never to show up in. Certain people, friendships that ruin you. Certain conversations that defile your spirit and walk you away from the wisdom that God has already given you. And I want you to know that God is a rewarder of every man that stands by their consecration. Because as we go on, we see that in verse 20 it says that when the time came for these 4 young men to appear before the king in selection. Now I also want you to realize that in the selection of these men that would serve in the palace, it was not just the 4 who are from the tribe of Israel, who are from the nation of Israel, who are selected. There were many more men. But because of the decisions that these 4 men made specifically about their lives, we see amongst the rest of the people that were selected to serve, they stood out. None was found like the 4 of them. And it says he found them, the king found them 10 times better. And so we see them serving. For Daniel, we see him serving 4 kings. It's like he took a position in that palace that no one could get him out of, until he served his purposes in what the Lord had called him to do. So this morning I want to remind you that the Lord is indeed looking for a man. Are you that man? Are you that man? Are you that man? Will you say yes? Will you say yes to the Lord? Will you say yes to the Lord? Will you say, I am here, Lord, I am willing. I am willing to go through whatever I need to go through. Whatever I need to stand, to believe that I am the man for the job. Will you say yes? In a few minutes, we get to spend some time in prayer. But here is the song, Here I Am, by Hillsong. Make that prayer. Lord, here I am. Lord, here I am.
Pearl Radio, the home of fresh and classic hits.